Okay, I wanted to pick up where I left off on the last clip, or last video. I was kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent, giving a little bit of background history into some of the history of the counterculture in the United States. But I wanted to get back to talking about Gnosticism, primarily what my research is about and what the book is about, Gnostic Visions, and why it's important, and what really what Gnosticism is. So in kind of creating a little bit of an educational slideshow about Gnosticism, about my book, I thought I would start off with an introduction about Gnosticism. So the main theory, obviously, in my research focuses on the initiation rites of the Hermetic tradition, the Egyptian Hermetic tradition, as well as other Gnostic groups that within their writings were shown to have visionary experiences, visions of the divine, visions of angels, encounters with luminous beings, higher dimensional entities, and so on and so forth. And the thing that they all seem to share is not only that there are some of these books which have these visionary rites, but some of the visionary rituals. I mean, a lot of the visionary rituals were obviously secret and then were never written down. But some of the books, particularly the Hermetic corpus, and a few of the Gnostic books, allude to or describe cups that were drank, and these cups contained visionary powers. And that cup, in the 5-stage ritual baptism, seems to be responsible for what's creating the experience. There's nothing else that could create it, but it's a 5-stage ritual. One of the stages is baptism, drinking of a cup, and then these people have these visions. So it's pretty clear that obviously there's something creating the visions. What could it be? There's only a limited number of plants in the area that are able to create such experiences. We know this. The Middle East has a few visionary plants. Now, we know what the effects are of these plants. The interesting thing is the ayahuasca or DMT-like experience has a unique characteristic that other visionary plants do not possess. Most of the visionary plants that do exist in the Middle East are very limited, and they are toxic. We have datura, which was primarily used by the Egyptians, that from we have evidence of. There was also mandrake and herbane. They all contain scopolamines, which are more hallucinogenic and delirious inducing compounds. They do create visionary experiences, but not anything like what you would get with psilocybin or DMT-like experiences. And so obviously they wouldn't be prime candidates. Now there is evidence to suggest that herbane, mandrake, and datura were used in various witchcraft practices, for magical witchcraft practices in Europe during the Dark Ages. There's less evidence that they were used in the Middle East, but there is some evidence that they were used. But they're not high on the spiritual type of emotional experience that you would get, like you would with psilocybin or DMT from acacia trees or Psychontia viridis in the Amazon. This is the symbol of life in the Egyptian religion, the ancient Egyptian religion, symbol of life. Now, these are images of the Nag Hammadi codices, the ancient Gnostic books that I was talking about earlier, that are found in the Egyptian desert. shortly after, basically right when books were invented, they started moving away from scrolls. They're leather bound with papyrus pages. So people stopped rolling and unrolling scrolls and started making these leather bound books. These were written in a combination of Greek and Aramaic. And I think largely Aramaic, if I'm not mistaken. And they were written somewhere in the late 3rd century, early 4th century. Literally right when Orthodox Christianity had completely taken hold and was basically fanatical Christians were taking over the country and were starting to hunt down Gnostics. The Gnostics were the first to go. Any heretical books or false teachings were first to be eradicated. Once the Gnostics fell, then the Christianity turned onto paganism and the old religions of the old world, the Egyptian religions of Osiris, the Greek religions, and the Neoplatonic philosophies, and so on and so forth. Some other images from the Nag Hammadi library that I pulled up online. This is the location where the Nag Hammadi library was found. Actually, somewhere, I don't know if it was a cave in one of these hills, but it was like at the base near one of these hills, either at a cave or in a tunnel buried somewhere near the hill in this part of Egypt. Here's now anyone who's going to go out and study Gnostic texts, one of the difficulties obviously is they're not complete. Some of the books are highly fragmented. So there is certain books that are missing. They're just degraded, things that we'll never get back unless we can find other books. So some of the books, obviously, as I discussed earlier, are about Jesus, but actually a much larger portion of the Gnostic Nag Hammadi library are visionary, esoteric teachings of a previously unknown religious group. We have come to know this group much better since 1945. Has been called Gnosticism, and the origins of the religious movement seem to have come out of the cultural soup that was the Roman Empire in the 2nd and 3rd century. Egyptian Hermetic tradition seems to be the foundation philosophy for most of the Gnostic tradition. There was a large movement of Jews, Judaism, within the Gnostic tradition. But for one reason or another, the Gnostic tradition picked Jesus Christ as their great prophet, their great teacher. Within the oldest of Gnostic books, there was a figure known as Seth. Seth was the great son of Adam who was said to one day come back into the world, reincarnate, and his spirit, his avatar, whatever you want to call it, would come back into physical human form and teach man righteousness and save mankind from the evils of the world and bring purity and goodness back into the world. Well, they believe that Jesus was the reincarnation of this great prehistoric prophet named Seth, because he was the teacher of righteousness, as is also backed up by the Dead Sea Scrolls. Anyway, so most of the books are visionary, and they describe these mystical, visionary experiences. Some of the most mystical and visionary experiences we have in all of ancient classical literature. That's really what makes Gnosticism stand out, and why it needs to be studied, and why I studied it, and why I found such value in these ancient teachings. Now, the great thing about Gnosticism is it's not 100% extinct. There are modern-day Sethian Gnostics still alive. They are known as the followers of John the Baptist. They claim John the Baptist as their last great prophet. They are known as the Mandaeans, or Mandaeans. They are a baptizing sect that have Jesus in their holy books, as well as John the Baptist. But they are a little bit different. They actually live. They're very small. They've been persecuted for a very long time under Islamic rule, heavy persecution. There's actually not very many left. We're hoping that they're not going to become extinct. Send your prayers. Their population is probably 50,000 people. They live in Iraq along the Euphrates River. They baptize. They believe in ritual purity. They believe in life. They believe that God is the great life. Water is the symbol of life, and therefore water is sacred. Water is a symbol of God. Their teachings are all about the great life, the mind of God, the light of God. Very mystical, very connected to what you would almost call a visionary, or the deepest kind of teachings. Their teachings are very old. When you study the Mandaean holy books, they go all the way back to ancient Samaria. And they have Jewish and Egyptian and Mesopotamian, but they're influences, but they're largely based around monotheistic religious practices going back to ancient Samaria, and the earliest religious practices of really the root of Judaism. So they're very old and very interesting. As far as religions go, they're probably one of the oldest religions on earth. Right up there with Hinduism. Hinduism and the Mandaeans would be pretty close as far as looking back into structured religion, into antiquity. Again, here's some more Mandaeans. They're modern Gnostics. Now, you're probably going to ask yourself, do the modern Mandaeans practice any visionary rites? No. But what I found out by studying the Mandaeans is the two plants required to create this visionary brew that I write about in my book in the Middle East. One of the plants is a bushy plant called Pungenum hermala. Now, these aren't Pungenum hermala plants here. They are actually some myrtle. Myrtle is like a fertility plant in the classical world. This is an image of the Jordan River. They hold the Jordan River as sacred in their religious writings. When the group was formed, apparently there was a split. Half of the people followed John the Baptist, half the people followed Jesus. Half of the Gnostics believed that John the Baptist was the Savior, and the other half believed Jesus was. For whatever reason, Jesus won out. Anyway, these people continued to follow John the Baptist. Their holy books were written about a generation after John the Baptist was passed away. So it's no coincidence that the Jordan River is held up in such high esteem in their religion. Here's another image of the Jordan River. You can get baptized there today. There are no Mandaeans currently in Israel. There used to be. Probably sometime during the Crusades is the last documented evidence that we know about for there being Mandaeans in Israel. The Templars were involved with encountering the Mandaeans, and it was actually a big reason why the Templars were deemed heretical and basically run out by the Catholic Church. That's a whole other story we won't go into today. This is just an image of one of the Mandaean holy books. There's some plants here. It's considered a magical document. I like to point this out because the images of these leaves look very similar to acacia leaves. And this thing here looks very similar to Pungenum hermala. You can see the little pods and the 5-pointed star leaves around the pods. Now, I've tried contacting various Mandaean priests about this image, and I have not gotten any anything conclusive about it. Unfortunately, the Mandaeans are very, very secretive and very protective about their religion. I feel a cultural fear because they've had a lot of persecution in the past. and they're not very open